The route for the 2026 Etape du Tour has just been announced. It will take place on the 19th of July and start in Bourg d'Oisans, finishing on Alpe d'Huez, after climbing the Col de la Croix de Fer, the Télégraphe, the Galibier, and finally the Col de Sarenne to arrive in Alpe d'Huez by the back door. This is Marvin from Granfondo coaching specialist Alpine Cols, and I'm going to preview the route for you. Sadly, our usual first ride video isn't possible this year because the snow has come early and the passes are already closed for the winter. However, after 20 years of cycling up and down them, I know all these climbs like the back of my hand, so I can give you a good idea of what to expect. At 170 kilometers and 5,400 meters of climbing, the 2026 Etape is a real monster, perhaps the hardest ever. Compared to the last couple of years, this is an extra 40 kilometers and 1,000 meters of vertical, which puts it in the middle ground between a tough Granfondo and an ultra fondo. It's a big step up, and only the very strongest riders can race this in the normal sense of the word. For everybody else, it's going to be a massive challenge just to finish. So before we go any further, let me give you a quick tip. You will need to take your training and preparation extremely seriously. This is an order of magnitude harder than running a marathon, for example. Self-coaching is full of traps. If you want to be properly prepared, make sure you join at least one of our coaching camps. Come to Tenerife on January the 31st for some early practice in the mountains, and we will set you up with a training plan for the Etape. Come to our camp on June the 28th to do a final block of climbing and to ride the actual route. This is perfectly placed to allow for 2 weeks recovery before the Etape itself. At both these camps, you'll get the professional coaching you need to be at your very best on the day. So let's take a look at the route. It covers most of the same roads as the famous Marmotte Granfondo, which is the oldest and usually the most difficult of the French sportives. But the differences actually make it harder by an extra 400 meters of climbing. The start will be in Bourg d'Oisans. The first 10 kilometers are flat. There's a short climb to the dam immediately after the village, then a further 3 kilometers on the flat before the real start of the climb to the Croix de Fer. When it starts, it starts. You're straight into a 6 kilometer climb to the next village. The gradient varies from 7 to 9%. And the road goes up quite straight through the forest, and the nice thing is it'll be cool here in the early morning. However, nearly everybody rides this section far too fast given what is to come. After the village is a brief flat section followed by a steep, sinuous descent with several tight hairpins, and then a short, sharp shock of more than 13% to climb. The remainder of the climb to the col is easier. The slope is never more than 8%, and it gradually flattens out after 20 kilometers, leading into a short descent, which is good for recovery. But there's still 5 kilometers to climb to reach the top. All right, first climb done. Next up is the long descent all the way down to the valley. The first 7 kilometers are relatively steep, technical, and dangerous with multiple hairpins, and then the slope eases off through the ski village. There's a 3 kilometer rise in the middle of the descent with about 1.5k at 5%. The descent then gets steep and technical again with a series of challenging bends until a second 3 kilometer plateau and a final straight line plunge where the pros can easily exceed 100 kilometers per hour. Don't try that yourself. Once through the village at the bottom, you can cross the valley and begin a 12 kilometer false flat climb up the valley to Saint-Michel-de-Maurienne and the start of the Télégraphe. There's often a headwind in the valley, sadly. To be honest, this section just has to be endured as you complete your recovery from the Croix de Fer and prepare for the long haul to the top of the Galibier. Taken together, the Télégraphe and Galibier add up to almost 35 kilometers and 2,100 meters of climbing, with a 5 kilometer descent in the middle. Let's take a look at these 3 sections in turn. The Col du Télégraphe is already a decent climb at 11.5 kilometers and 850 meters, but the slope is really pretty regular at about 7%, sometimes 6, sometimes 8. The road winds up through a forest, so it's partly shaded and it can be reasonably cool on a hot day. It's a great climb to do at a steady, constant pace. After crossing the summit, you descend for 5 kilometers, the first part on a false flat and the second part much steeper until the village. The corners are wide and open, so it's an easy descent and good for recovery, although it ends all too quickly after only 7 or 8 minutes. Don't forget to eat and drink, because you're about to face the biggest climb of the day, one of the most iconic climbs in the world, a real giant. The slope is never extremely steep, with the exception of the final kilometre, which is partly at 11%. What makes the Galibier one of the hardest climbs in the Alps is the length, the altitude, and the fact that it immediately follows on from the Télégraphe. The first challenge comes before leaving the village of Valois, with a steep ramp to climb in a straight line. This is a tough section mentally, because the climb is steeper than it looks. The road then eases off, with a couple of kilometres around 2% before a fairly constant 6 to 7% all the way to the head of the valley at Plan-l'Achat, 10 kilometres into the climb. Here you cross the 2,000 metre contour and the serious work begins. The road cuts back across the valley, over the bridge, and then climbs steeply through a series of hairpins at an average of 8% for the last 8 kilometres. You'll start to feel the lack of oxygen as you climb well above 2,000 metres. The final kilometre is particularly tough, with sections at 11%. Reaching the summit is a huge milestone. If you can manage this in front of the time cut, you have a good chance of being able to finish the etape. There's only one more big climb to do after this. But first of all, there's a long descent. The first 8 kilometres off the Galibier are very fast and can be dangerous. The road is narrow and the slope varies around -6% average until you reach the Col du Glandon on the main road. So from here on, we're on a wide main road. Most of the next 25 kilometres are a gentle descent on which you need to pedal pretty continuously to maintain a good pace. There's often a headwind. Beware of several dark tunnels and an unexpected climb that can cause cramps if you take it too hard. Finally, after skirting the lake, you're at the foot of the final climb to the Col de Sarenne. Don't underestimate this one. It's at least as tough as the main road climb to Alpe d'Huez, arguably more so because it's often steeper and the road surface is less good. The first kilometre to Mizoen is a real shock, with 500 metres at 12%. In the summer heat, with tired legs, this will be a real challenge. And as usual at the etape, we can confidently predict that hundreds, if not thousands of people will be reduced to walking here. There are a couple of respites in the climb, but although welcome, these break your rhythm, and after each one it's harder and harder to find the energy for another 9% slope. The last 4K in particular are a relentless 9% with no shade and in the full glare of the sun. Everybody's going to suffer here. Once over the top, it's not quite finished. There's still another 9 kilometres to go, including still more climbing. The initial descent is steep and dangerous, and the 8% pitch after 4 kilometres is perfectly placed to cause cramps. Make it through here, and there's just a few hundred metres climbing left to the official Tour de France finish line near the top of Alpe d'Huez. To summarise, the Etape du Tour will be harder than ever in 2026, and we can be certain that many people will be unable to finish. 5,400 metres is a massive amount of climbing, especially in midsummer. I can't emphasise enough, if you want to perform at your best, you'll have to prepare seriously, and this is where we can help you. All of our camps are run by professional cycling coaches, not tour guides. Join us in Tenerife in January to focus on building your skills and refining your training plan, and then at the end of June to practice on the actual route itself. Check our website for more information and don't hesitate to drop me an email with any questions. This is Marvin saying good luck with your training and thank you for listening.